We were just visiting a friend. Many of you know him, Mr. Kailash, and we have a connection, two connections. The main connection is through Anandamoy Ma, and he's a deep devotee of Anandamoy Ma. And I visited, along with Swami Kriyanandaji, Anandamoy Ma in 1974, and we were telling different stories about our experiences. And then we also share a very special kind of connection. Devi and I had a very, very dear friend, a woman named Hari Priya, who was a disciple of Anandamoy Ma, and a very close friend also of Swami Kriyananda. And when we first arrived at the community at Ananda village, in fact, within the first week, Devi and Hari Priya made a deep connection together. And all of our life, there's been a kind of, it's been intertwined with Hari Priya, with Swamiji, with Anandamoy Ma, all of us kind of intermixed together. Hari Priya and I felt very strongly that we had been brother and sister in our last life, and there was a deep bond of love that was shared. Within the first day or two of Devi arriving at Ananda village, Hari Priya, there was an instant bonding between them. And Hari Priya came up to her and said, "You're going to marry Jyotish." Now, this was 7 years before we were married, and Devi didn't even know me at the time. And she thought, well, this woman is a little bit strange. But Hari Priya just said, "You wait and see." And of course it was correct. And Hari Priya was the attendant, the maid of honor at our wedding when we did marry. But she, as I was saying, she passed away just a few months before Swami Kriyanandaji. And he was able, when he was last in America, to visit her. And there was a deep, deep love between the two of them. And they had shared a life of devotion to God together. Hari Priya was very deeply a bhakti, and she would have a deep effect on the people that visited her, because she was always thinking of God, always singing to God. And it's not so strange here in India that you would find a person like that. But in America, the people of that nature, deep bhaktis like that, are few and far between. And so whenever we would visit Hari Priya, she would awaken deep devotion in our hearts. She had a tumor, a cancerous tumor, and I think she knew her time was coming to an end. And so about a year and a half ago, she made a visit to India, and it was very difficult for her traveling alone, and she was not well. She was not in the final stages, but certainly was suffering from cancer at the time. But she came because she wanted to visit all of the places that she had been with Ma, and to essentially say goodbye. And it was during the visit of one of those places that she just happened to meet with Kailash. And they spent 2 or 3 hours together talking, and of course he mentioned that he was connected with Ananda, and she said, "Oh, yes, yes," and they talked about Swamiji and talked about the two of us. So there's some intertwining of our lives together. And so that's where we were, and it was very precious in a certain way because it awakens in our heart the longing for the divine and the connection to the divine. And that connection with the divine, the longing of the heart, is the most precious gift that we have on this plane. Everything else can wait. But God, that connection of the heart to God, that cannot wait. And if we make it wait, then it's we ourselves who do the waiting. It's we ourselves who will lead a life that is a little bit of a shadow life. Ananda Ma said that the natural food of the mind is joy, and we will always be hungry until we feast on that joy. And so feasting on that joy is, one could say, the only real duty that we have. The only real duty that we have is to love God in one form or another. And many other responsibilities and duties crowd in and seem to be very, very important. But if we allow, as Master said, if we allow those other duties, those other things, to keep us from our appointment with God, then it's not God who gets angry. It's not the masters who get upset with us. Sometimes we think, oh, I have to meditate or Master will be upset with me. Or I have to do this or I'll be displeasing to God. We're never displeasing to God. Master and the great saints, they're never angry with us. But they suffer for us because they know that if our hearts turn away from God, or that we get so caught up in the affairs of life that it drives out of our mind our connection with the divine, our connection with our own soul, they aren't angry with us, but they know that we ourselves will suffer. If nothing else, we will suffer from eating food that will never satisfy us, because the only food that will satisfy us is joy. That's the natural food of the mind. And everything else, it seems as if it will satisfy us. But it ultimately proves that as Swamiji said, that the things of this world are consistent only in one thing. They never keep their promise. They seem to attract us. They seem to promise that if only we do whatever it is, if only we become rich, then we will be satisfied, we'll be fulfilled, and we'll be happy. And then we'll feast on joy once we get rich. We've had many, many people at Ananda over the years who have left the community thinking, I'm going to go out and make a lot of money and give that money to the work. And not only has it rarely happened that they made much money, but they themselves suffered in some way. Not at all because Ananda or their friends condemned them. It's just that things didn't work out the way that they wanted them to work out. And it isn't just money. Money is just one of the many, many things that the world has that promises us that if we do this, then we'll be satisfied. Master said that it's like a donkey that's stubborn. The mind is like a donkey that's stubborn. And he said for some donkeys, in order to get them to move, they tie a stick over the top of their head. And on that stick, about a foot in front of their nose, they hang a carrot. And that donkey sees the carrot and wants to eat it. And so it takes a step forward and keeps taking steps forward and forward and forward. But of course, the stick being tied to its own head keeps moving in front of it. And in this way, the smart donkey driver gets the stubborn animal to move in the direction that he wants. Well, it's like that in the world. Partly the reason that we were late coming was traffic was very, very heavy. And I was thinking to myself, all of these people so busy, so driven, and how many of them are truly happy in their hearts and in their souls? Not very many. There's a certain level of happiness that can be achieved, but again, the real fulfillment can't be achieved because the fulfillment doesn't lie outside of ourselves, it lies within ourselves. And that's what all of the great saints, all of the great masters come again and again and again into this world, and they really have just one simple message. Their simple message is to give our love to God and to our own inner self, our own soul, and not give away our power to something outside of ourself, thinking that this will give us happiness. Swamiji one time was with I've forgotten the name of the man, an Indian man, and they were talking, and somehow the conversation got turned to how many people in the West think that the Indians are superstitious, in part because of the many different forms of God that are worshipped here. And some people in the West don't understand. As Swami said, it isn't idols that are worshipped, but it's ideals. It's different aspects of God. And so some people in the West think that it's just superstitious to worship this form or that form or Ganesha or whatever it might be. But in fact, these are just aspects of God. And so at any rate, they were talking about the subject of superstition. And this Indian man said, well, what greater superstition can there be than to think that a pole falling on your head will wake you up? No. I'll tell a story in just a moment, but what greater superstition can there be than to think that some material thing can give you happiness? Now I'll tell a story about this. We were at Swamiji, and a group of us from Ananda were at a large hall, and Swamiji was giving a talk. And there was a young boy, probably about your age, Ricardo, who was sitting in the back against the wall. And this boy, young man, had talked with Swamiji earlier and didn't know whether he should come to India because he had a feeling that maybe Satya Sai Baba was his guru. And Swamiji didn't want to say too much one way or another. But during Swamiji's talk, he said the phrase, which is common in the teachings, that when the devotee is ready, the guru will come to that devotee. As Swamiji said that phrase, this young man who was sitting against the back wall had a picture fall off the wall that he didn't even know was there. Fell off the wall, landed face up in his lap, and it was a picture of Satya Sai Baba. And so just at the moment that Swamiji said, when the devotee is ready, the guru will come to him. And so he took the hint and went on to India. And I don't know what happened to him. He didn't keep in contact, and we didn't know. But the reality is that the one essential ingredient in our life is to cultivate our connection with God. And that connection begins with love. As Jesus said, and it's quoted in the Bible, and we quote it in our services each week. We remember this phrase. He said, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul, and with all thy strength." This is the first and great commandment for everyone. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all of the law and the prophet. So these great saints bring it always back to the simple human terms, the simple divine terms applied to us as humans that are important for our welfare. And it's so simple, but it's not easy to do. We must love the Lord thy God with all our heart. That means devotion. With all our mind. That means thoughts. It's also the paths of yoga that he was talking about. We must be bhaktis. We must be jnani. With all thy strength. That means prana. So we must give all of our life force. That's the path of Raja Yoga, and especially the path of Kriya Yoga. And with all thy soul. And that's our subtle nature. And so, but it all begins with the simple phrase, thou shalt, or you must love your Lord God. And without that love being awakened in the heart, as Master's Guru Sri Yukteswar said, without the natural love of the heart, we cannot take a single step on the spiritual path. And so we might say that our most important task, our most important duty, is to keep alive within ourselves the natural love of the heart for God. It's that which will lead us in the direction that our soul is driving us to go in. Why is the soul driving us in that direction? Because it's hungry. Our soul is hungry. It needs to feast on joy. And unless we find that joy in God, in our relationship with God, who is our own self. God is not outside of ourself. God is our own self. It's everything else that seems to be outside of ourself. But unless we find that deep love and that deep relationship within our own self, we will always be hungry and we will always be driven and we will never be fulfilled. And there are two things especially that help in keeping that love, first of all, alive and then growing stronger and stronger. The first is the relationship, the disciple-guru relationship. Because the guru is not a person. It is God who is manifested in that form that we connect with, that we resonate with, that we hold dear. It's God in that form, in an enlightened form, so that we can, because we're not ready yet to find and see God within in the subtle form, then God manifests in physical form so that we can see him with our eyes and hear him with our ears. And if we have to, that we can touch him, and even as one of the disciples of Jesus did, stick our finger in the wound to make sure. But it's all God, and God will manifest outwardly, but only so that we will have an object that we can connect with. And the job of the guru is not to bring our devotion to himself or herself, but to turn our devotion back to God alone. Master, sometimes they would say this person or that person is your disciple. One time someone said about Dr. Lewis, who was the first disciple of Master in America. They said, "Oh, Dr. Lewis was your first disciple." And Master became very kind of withdrawn. And they said, "Did I say something that was wrong?" And Master said, "I have no disciples. Only God has disciples." Dr. Lewis is a disciple of God. You might say that he is a disciple of God through me, but he is not my disciple. Master would never take that devotion only unto himself. It was always through him and then given to God. So the first thing that keeps this deep love alive for us is our relationship to that form that we hold dearest, that form that God has come to us. And that's in part why it was so beautiful talking with Kailash, because for him, his guru is Anandamoy Ma. And in fact, he wouldn't be alive except for the intercession of Ma in his life when he was desperately ill and about to die. She visited him in the hospital and just passed her hands all over his head and all over his body. And then the doctors had despaired of his life, but she said he'll be well, and he was well very quickly. So it doesn't matter so much the form. It was like twin souls, him talking about his beloved Ma and us talking about Swamiji and Master and Ma, who I also had the great blessing to meet and have some beautiful stories. But all of the outward aspect is not the essence. The essence is that the divine manifests in a form for us personally to awaken the love for the divine in our heart, so that we have some focal point to express that. So this deep and dear guru-disciple relationship, it is so precious, so precious. It's the most precious thing of all. And then Master taught that the second most important factor in order to help feed the soul with its true food is just what we're doing now, is satsang, is gathering together with other devotees and other people who have this hunger, who have this love for God that's been awakened in their heart. I don't need to convince you that you aren't reinforced in your love of God throughout most of your daily activity. There wasn't anyone in all that traffic jam coming here who was chanting to God, at least outwardly. Maybe there were some inwardly, but that wasn't satsang. This is satsang, where we gather together, those of us who love God, those of us who want more and more deeply to develop our relationship with God, where we gather together and reinforce that desire in each other. It is so valuable. I can't tell you how valuable it is for all of you to have a center like this, where there can be regular daily or weekly satsang together, because otherwise the magnetism of the world will begin to intrude, and it will begin to, I don't know, you'll begin to believe all those billboards that tell you that you will be happy if only you buy property in such and such a tower, or if only you get such and such a fragrance, whatever it is. We had a friend of ours in America who had driven about 3 hours along the highway from San Francisco to Ananda Village. And he said, I saw all billboards all along the way saying, eat me, buy me, take me home. And if only you do, you'll be happy. And all of those billboards, they all lie. They're all a message that won't really satisfy. But satsang, sat, truth, the gathering together of others who are seeking truth and others who are trying their best to live in truth. That is extremely, extremely valuable. And you are very, very, very fortunate to have a center that you can come to and the activities here. And I just want to urge you to keep coming together, supporting each other in your desire to know God and in your spiritual practices, along with and supporting the center in order to be able to be here and to give out this light. Because among the other things, the Guru comes not just with the love and not just with the magnetism and the grace, but also, especially in our case, Master came with a set of practices, especially the practice of meditation and of Kriya Yoga. And we need to support each other in our practices and in the daily habits that are necessary. And if we do that, with these two, the guru-disciple relationship and satsang, we will be able to make progress in this life that is worth dozens and dozens of lives that are just led outwardly. Master said that a single kriya is the equivalent of a whole year of living in the world, going through that traffic. Think of a year of commuting through that traffic every day, and a single kriya will give you as much spiritual progress as that. So in a single meditation, you can have a whole lifetime worth of spiritual progress. How valuable is that? As I have said sometimes during an initiation, during a lifetime of practicing Kriya, you can easily do 1 million or 2 million Kriyas. So make the choice. Do you want to do 1 million or 2 million lifetimes or years of traveling through traffic and all the difficulties, or do you want to sit and do some Kriya? But we get so caught up that the value of satsang, the value of the Guru, the value of coming together and having a center to remind us, let's get out of this delusion and let's do it as quickly as we can. That is so, so helpful on the spiritual path. And so we have a blessed life in this life. We have a life where we have a true guru and a true line of gurus. As it says in the scriptures, in all the 3 worlds, there is no gift so valuable as the connection to a true guru. And we have that in our life in this time. The connection with this line of gurus and with Swamiji. And then we have also, which Master brought and Swamiji put into effect so strongly, we have beautiful satsang and gathering together. And it really is a blessed life. And I just urge you, and I'm also speaking to myself and all those who are fortunate enough to lead this life. Let's make the very best use of it we can, because otherwise the waters of forgetfulness, those waves wash over, and who knows how long we will spend until we get these blessed circumstances come so presently into our life again. So let's make good use of this great, great gift that God and Guru have given us.
Shashir asked us if we would do a blessing for our center here, and so we will just conclude with that. But this morning at our morning meditation at the Pune community, we read a passage from Swami Kriyananda's beautiful book, Conversations with Yogananda. And we read the passage where Swamiji describes in 1948 they were having a meditation with Yoganandaji, with Master, and Master had a beautiful vision of Divine Mother. You know, he worshipped God as Divine Mother because he said the mother is closer than the father. And so Divine Mother came and he kept saying, "Oh, how beautiful you are, how beautiful you are." And it went on for several hours, and he let the devotees present hear him talking directly with Divine Mother. They didn't see her the way he was seeing, but they heard his part of the conversation with her. And finally he said, he started crying out, "Please don't go, please don't go." And then he said, "The worldly thoughts of the others in this room are driving you away." And finally the vision was over. But Swami concludes that little story, that recounting of that experience by saying, when we were with Master, it felt like all the veils of Maya were just parting, and God was so close, so touchable, so reachable. And so we need to look in ourselves. There are the parts of our own self that are enmeshed in the world, and there are the parts of our own self that are yearning for God. Don't let those materialistic aspects drive away the other parts, and let all of your energy we are riding on the waves of the grace of Yogananda now. So let's ride on those waves. Let's draw his grace in our life so that we too can feel that blessedness. Master said, "I didn't come here to just get you out of your little world. I came here so that you could find God. Nothing short of that." So let's live in such a way that we separate those veils of delusion, that we awaken from our sleep, that we are physical bodies, that we are personalities, that we have problems. All of these things are just a delusion. The only truth is the love of our heart that reaches out to God, and the love of Divine Mother that calls us to her. And everything else will pass away. But at Kailash, our friend Kailash had a cake that he made for us. And when I saw it, I just started weeping, because he wrote, and he said, "To my dear friends Jyotish and Devi," and then at the top it said, "Love is immortal." And that is the only eternal truth in all of this world, the eternity, the eternal nature of that divine love, and everything else is just trying to awaken out of delusion.